source software, funnily enough. So thanks very much to Chris.
All right. Let's see, you get that. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I realize I'm between you and coffee and tea, so we'll work our way through this. So yeah, I'm Chris Sigger, and my colleague Bailey Hansen, who couldn't be here today, and I do a lot of work teaching FOSS and using FOSS in our outreach program. And so if you missed yesterday's talk on community capitals, that is our, like, part of our research component that we do within our university, working with communities to help communities use indicators to better understand changes that are happening, where they might have deficiencies. By community capital, I was talking about infrastructure, cultural, political, economic, those types of things. And so we do that part of our work, but the part that we both enjoy the most is teaching people how to use geospatial tools and to use those tools to help solve some of the questions and issues they have. So I'm going to kind of take you down through my thought process on that, some of the software that we use, and why I think it's a nice, simple way into it. I recognize a lot of our conference here talks about using open source tools to avoid, the cost of their tools or proprietary software. But there's also proprietary software that is free to use and is easy to use and might be the perfect fit for the individuals that you're working with, because at the end of the day, we're just trying to solve a spatial problem. So let me take you down our path. I do have to declare, though, that I spent 20 plus years teaching ArcGIS, everything from ArcView back in 1997 all the way on, about 1,500 different people. I stopped doing that a couple years back. I have other people that still do that. Our office still teaches this, but I teach QGIS workshops now. My work and background with community spatial projects revolved around a lot with, I'm a landscape architect, so we did a lot with access to parks, community walkability, more recently dealing with energy and looking at the siting of different types of energy projects and other natural resources. And over that time, we were dealing with a lot of spatial data, but not just spatial data. We had a lot of non-spatial tabular data that was coming in, and having to figure out how do we take that data and convert it or get it in a form of use that we can share information back to the public. Now, I mentioned I work for Cooperative Extension in the United States. Each of the states has what's called a land-grant university. Those land-grant universities have a mission to not only teach students in the traditional classroom sense, but to also provide education to the public, research to the public throughout their state as part of the mission that they have for education and research. And so with this set of information and knowledge for working with data, we got put into a project about 17 years ago now, in which the president or our vice president came to us and said, hey, can you guys help us revitalize a project of old in a more contemporary fashion, in which we had all this data, but we don't have the financial resources or the human resources to convert that data so we can share it back out to the public. And so we have masses upon masses of data that came in and had to work with this non-tabular or with this tabular data and started putting it into these reports. So this is 4 pages out of a report, not spatial data, but it was still data we were having to parse, use, refresh, make PDFs on the fly upon request, and do that. So we learned a lot of process with technology, databases, scripting, R, Python, to help us do that. I mean, some of our reports were 40 plus pages, and we had 930 of those reports that were unique, and we're producing those every year, and that's just one of our data sets. So really just a data processor is what we became. Then about a decade, or 6-7 years ago, because of all that, we started a program called the Data Science for the Public Good. It was with University of Virginia as well. But we work as a summer, it's a summer camp, okay? It's a summer camp for college students that are interested in data science. And we work on some outreach projects with either state agencies or a community or what have you, and help use different tools. The bottom one here, they're getting an introduction to the community. Then they're going to go out and they're using devices to map different features in the community. And one of the teams is also taking pictures of all the roof lines and marking it. And then we're comparing their ground truth data to what AI could infer from imagery about what the roof's quality was. We're trying to identify what roofs need to be in repair, might have decline, and could benefit by having sort of a grant program to help improve the gutter system, the rain gutter system on it. And so that was kind of a fun project to do. So yeah, data science is probably good. We use a process called the community learning through data-driven discovery. So that's very much involved with the communities or the public and having them help tell us what data resources they think would exist in their community and how, because a lot of our rural communities don't have good data. I mean, they have data, but they don't recognize that it's data. Some of the data they have is just the knowledge of the collective community about things. Well, how do we extract that? And then how do you make that spatial? So we can use it in informed decision making. And so this process helps us do that. And so of course the students, they have a chance to go through that, are using various tools. Some of the students are brand new to GIS and geospatial stuff, so we bring them in very softly. We have other students though in that class that are super high-end, high-tech, AI, on the edge of AI, doing all the stuff in that class. And so this mix together is really cool because all of a sudden you have a computer science graduate student doing AI with a third year or a junior in planning that doesn't do much for digital, but really understands planning and law, working together at the same table and making these decisions. Okay, then on other projects that deal with walkability, I mean, our clients and the types of issues that they have, this is a typical meeting out in the community, and we're all around a table and we're presenting, we're looking at maps, but they're not really engaged. They're just learning from the stuff and the research we're doing. And so you really want buy-in if you want projects to happen. And so we want to be able to get them more involved with the work we're doing. So in 2024, we got an NSF grant, a part of an NSF grant to help us pilot a workshop to help increase workforce development. And it included some different geospatial tools. And with this, we have Bailey here talking about a project she did. But really looking at that free part of FOSS that's easily accessible, because our clientele that we're working with to try and train how to use these tools, this is either an extra job on top of everything else they're doing, or in a lot of cases, they are retired individuals in the community that want to give back to the community and are looking for what type of tools and software can we use just to help give back and be part of the community. And so as we look at our FOSS solutions, so we're looking at free or open source, minimal complexity, we want the right tool for the job. We don't need to overwhelm these individuals with like something like ArcGIS that can do a million things, okay? They need to do one or two things. But we also want to have a software that's got a skill growth map. So if they are interested in it, it's not a dead end. We can take them and transfer them onto some other software. We do look for multi-platform OS solutions. And the key one on the bottom is the ability to save their work and ideally save it locally, okay? If they have to save it in a cloud and they don't have access to have a copy to it, we don't consider that a viable solution, because they might do all this work and wake up tomorrow and that company decide to turn off their servers and they've lost all their data. So we want to make sure they can always save a copy of what they have locally. All right, so our general stack looks about like this. QGIS, Tableau, R, Google Sheets, GitHub, Inkscape, Mentimeter, which I was going to show you, but I decided not to use that one today, but that's just a polling piece of software. GeoJSON.io, which is one of the ones I use weekly. Of course, QGIS. And then we're using MariaDB, but we use other database solutions when necessary. A lot of times our clientele wouldn't use that. They would probably just use Google Sheets. So to start out with, my favorite that I use a lot with my walkability stuff that I was doing was GeoJSON.io. It's now owned or maintained by Mapbox, but it's still free to use. And the reason I use this, or where I use this software, is I work with communities and they're describing something to me. And in a traditional sense, I'd say, okay, here's a piece of paper. Can you draw that as a paper map? Can you draw that for me? And I used to do projects with youth in schools, with kids and their parents, because we wanted to understand how the kids got to and from school. Also did this with an older part of the community that talked about walkability. What trails and routes do they like to walk in their community? And they would draw them. Then I had students that digitized all that stuff. And we then made composite maps and worked with the community to understand, hey, this is where people want to walk. This is where they find that there's barriers. How can we do this? Tools like this, I can just have them go to the website. In about 3 minutes, I can show them how to draw a line or a point or a polygon, whatever, and add one attribute to it with a description. They have all the text on the right as a GeoJSON. Copy it, and if they want to email it to me, they could. That's the easiest. Or we have other means of doing that. So really like using this tool, and the format is ideal for us. Of course, they can also, if they want to make their own map of a community or some features in the community they want to talk about, they can do this. We show them how to make a GitHub page. They can just drop this file in and have a GitHub page, send the URL link out to the rest of their city council or whoever they are. Again, I'm talking about communities that might be 2,000 people, right? They have one city clerk, and that's the only paid staff they have administratively for the city. So this becomes really easy. Now, going back about 15 years ago, I was doing the same thing using Google Earth. We were making KML files, and we had set up a server. Well, initially they emailed them to me, but eventually they made a KML file, and they went to a web page and just hit upload, and it went to it, and it compiled all this stuff together. So the technology idea has been around for a long time, but there's new tools to keep using and adapting to make it easier. And we did similar things with people's phones, so they could do stuff on the phone, take pictures, and send them directly to our server because they were geotagged, and we could understand like where are features in the community where they have visual or concerns about. It could be a sidewalk. It's called the curb ramp. They could be all broken, or there's big bumps in the sidewalk which are tripping hazards. They could submit those in. It's the traditional pothole concern of the roadway. So then, well, of course, now we've also been using OSM for editing and updating our community maps, because a lot of these communities don't have infrastructure data. They don't have sidewalk data. They have the roads, but that's about it. And so this is the same community I used yesterday, Ogden. But you can see there's a pretty rich data set, except there is a house missing there. That house was just built recently. And so went and put that in. However, so there should be a house there, and there wasn't. And so when I was preparing for this workshop this fall, I grabbed this photo probably in, I don't know, September, and I was going to use a slide. And I went back to it about 2 weeks ago, and the picture of the house is there. Okay, so it would be easy to use OSM's data that then traced it in. But in the interim, there was another solution. And the other solution for us was to use, we have our own imagery at the university. The state gets flown almost every year. So we had imagery, and it is stored on a REST server, but I needed it in a format that I could use. And so I took it over to the ArcGIS server proxy tool from OpenStreetMap. It converted it to the XY coordinates that I needed, and I was able to plug it in and have it as a backdrop so that I could trace that house into the OSM data set. All right, R and GIS, we do a lot using R. Of course, that's not an easy thing to jump into for our for the individuals in the community. But if you have people that are a little bit tech savvy and they want to learn some stuff about spatial processing, they can do that. We use a software package called Tidy Census, which accesses the US Census data and brings it right in, and in about 10 lines of code, I can go grab a data set. Maybe it's like household income level at a certain scale. I can bring it in and have it export out for me a shape or a GeoJSON file of the entire state. And I can do that once I have those lines of code written. I can change the variable to be something else and get another one. And so I can readily get data really quick. And I can share that script with the community and tell them just plug in the different key code number right here, give them a list of the key codes, and run this, and it would work. So we use that. But the big one I want to talk about is Tableau Public. This is about 10 years back, or not quite 10 years back, but a dashboard I made for a community that looked at their busing and busing changes that they can make in the community, and also where people live in the population demographics. My colleague more recently was using Tableau Public to create a tool that shows what percentage of the city's budget goes into different areas. And then this is version 2 of that. We gave them a what if tool. So now they could say, hey, if we spent this much in public safety, what is that as a percentage of our whole? And then they could have a visual graphic to show it, and they could talk about how their city is discussing possibly changing their investment strategy in their community. All right, so Tableau Public. How many of you have used Tableau Public? Check it out. So it's free for non-commercial use. And they're pretty open about what they let you do. The biggest thing is, though, you do have to save. When you publish your project, you would be publishing on a public server, which is discoverable. But if you're working with an agency that is a public agency anyway that's wanting to share the information, that makes sense. Who this is not good for, your big corporation, you've got all those trade secrets about your finances, you would pay for the full version of the software to do the stuff because you want to keep that behind a firewall and protected, okay? But my clientele is public. We're there to serve the public and work. So it's good. One of the more recent versions, that's about a year old, does let us save a file locally. And so that was a big game changer for me with this newer version. The paid version of this software has many different connection formats. I don't know a good third of these, but they're there. The free version, not so many, but it has what we need as geospatial people. It has a spatial file, which means it can connect to a shapefile. It can connect to a GeoJSON file, all right? I think it can connect to a KML file too. And it can also connect to Google Drive, where we can have spreadsheet data stored. And why that's important is because if you have a spreadsheet of your data set stored and you have identified your geometry, so in the United States, this is Iowa, I have 99 states or counties in Iowa. If I have a spreadsheet that has a column that says, you want to have a column that says the state, and then, because they'll infer the country, and then the county name, and then your value, and another, and you can do long or wide data. It will automatically, not quite automatically, but nearly automatically make for you the map because it's got stored geometry within it. And so, next to the Tableau geometry, you can also link to a data set in Google Sheets and bring that in. It'll make the geometry for you. It has background maps that are WMS and background services you can use. And I was curious yesterday, what does it have for states, provinces, whether they're called in New Zealand and Australia? And it does bring them all in. They are also already built in. They don't have full worldwide coverage yet. But it's okay if they don't, because if you have a GeoJSON of the geometry or a shapefile, you can still use your own. And I actually do that quite a bit in some Iowa things I do where I have multiple layering. But the only caveat is, and I can't remember the exact name of this one right here. There's various spellings, evidently, of that region. And you got to make sure you use the right one so it lines up. But it was there. Okay, so watch my time here. I'll probably go 22 minutes or so. The external geometry that we can bring in is really good. We can do custom state locations. So this is a map right out of QGIS where I moved Alaska and Hawaii, so down around Texas. So you can bring in your own custom maps. If you're working in an area that's a subdivision of an area, you could still make that map in GeoJSON and bring that geometry in, then populate it with data and make it into an interactive. I also use GeoJSON because they don't have line texture support. So I made my own line texture map in QGIS, brought in its own geometry. So it's a geometry, but instead of drawing the county outlines, I'm drawing lines across the counties. And I can now change the color and the texture of those based upon whatever attribute I'm trying to share. You like a thicker line. If you want a certain thickness of a line, you can do that in QGIS and then just bring that in as your layer. So these work really nice together. And I think that having the external FOSS tools takes away a few of the deficiencies that people have typically thought of Tableau Public having. Even in Inkscape, if I wanted to draw a funny shape and use my own symbol, I can do that and bring it in as a symbol. I didn't think you could do this in the free version. I was kind of shocked that they let you do this in the free version. So a lot of the things they do let you do in the free version of the software. Do know Tableau Public has a version you install on your computer, Mac or PC. They also have a web version of it that runs entirely in the browser only. That version is not quite as fully featured because it can't read some of your computer resources that you need, but it's still pretty powerful, and they're both free. Recently, they've added features, geospatial functions, area, buffer, difference, a whole bunch of them, and you can make tools like in this case, I set the buffer size, and if it intersects the counties underneath, it gives me the sum total of the average income for those counties, okay? So you can use spatial averaging and do things like that. You got two sides up here. You can also embed your Tableaus, right? Of course they go to Tableau Public, but you can also take an HTML embed and go put it on your own website so that that interface can live on your own website. And there's some additional advanced tools that you can do. I teach our clients how to do the first method, but if you understand JavaScript, there's a second API method you can use to embed that. And that's it.
Have any questions for Christopher?
Yeah, it looks like Tableau has got a much more robust QGIS feature set than I thought it had. If you just wanted to do community mapping on a basic level, if you just skip everything and just go to Tableau for your maps?
Yes. Okay, so if you're making just like thematic maps and you're just trying to show some of that type of information, but you want it interactive, so like if the user moves the mouse over the state or region and it pops up with additional information, absolutely. And there's even things you could add buttons where you could flip back and forth between. Let's say you get a map that showed total population in 2000 and one that showed it in 2020. You can have a button on the page, you just press the button and it just flips the map back and forth, the two thematic maps. So you can add that interactivity. Now, in terms of the buffering, it adds the buffering now and the intersecting. Almost every other release that they have, and they do quarterly releases, it seems that they are refining and adding some more spatial stuff to it. If you want to get into the mathematics and write the scripting to do stuff, there's even more geospatial stuff that you can do beyond the functions they already have in there. But these are the ones that they're exposing. So it's becoming more robust. But I do pair it with QGIS. And the reason I do that is sometimes I want my own geometry for special features. Especially if I'm working at a scale that is like a community scale, and I'm drawing features out, I'll draw those features in QGIS and then bring those in as my geometry and then line it up with the attribute table that goes with it. You bet.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for the presentation. Just curious about, have you found any alternative platform for Tableau Public?
So Microsoft as a BI or whatever has an alternative that you could use to Tableau Public. One of the reasons, to be honest, we use Tableau Public. I also use Tableau Pro in Office for other projects that are not meant, they're more research focused. And so we don't always publish that out there. However, I'm more of my time is spent in the public world than in the paid world of Tableau. But we did a comparison, and in our justification, because our university wanted us to go to Microsoft's version, we felt like it was more like a pay for each feature. Every new feature you add, you had to pay for. And I didn't really like that. This provided what I needed. Don't get me wrong, Tableau's got paid features too. They got an AI level, they got all these other things. I don't need that, not for the work I'm doing. And so I've been definitely impressed more and more as each month goes by with what I can do with Tableau and the other FOSS tools that I have available to me. It's amazing what's available, and that's what we're trying to teach now to our clientele.
Do you think we can link Tableau Public with QGIS? Like if we have a plug-in for Tableau Public in QGIS, that would be really beneficial.
It'd be nice. I don't know. I mean, because Tableau Public doesn't. One of the things you don't have is the plugin development. That's a piece of the Pro version. Okay, but there are some workarounds to what you do in public under the hood that you can get better integration. What Tableau Public does is it reads once and then you publish. But if, let's say, you're connected to a Google Sheet, you can have it reconnect once a day.
Yeah.
And it will update on its own once a day. Now let's think about Google Sheets for a minute. Google Sheets has its own huge coding interface to it that you can do beyond just putting tabular data in there. So now make Google Sheets be part of your engine that's doing all of your algorithms and stuff. And it updates it itself once a day, and then Tableau updates from there. Well, now you've opened up a whole new world of possibilities.
Yeah. I just have a final question following our discussion. Do you have any plan, expand this kind of approach in the future? Yeah,
we're going to keep looking at the new technologies as they come out and getting feedback as we do more workshops. We piloted workshops in 2024. 3-4 weeks ago, I just did my first official full long day workshop on this, and in the different areas of it, we're going to keep doing other workshops. But we're also, what I mentioned yesterday in our community capitals research, we've done similar research to what we did there using enterprise software. We're trying to do all of that using QGIS and Tableau to publish our results now.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Any further questions for Christopher? I might actually add one myself if I can. With Tableau Public, how do you find the data privacy in there? So if you were creating Tableau outputs for a client that might have sensitive data, how do you find the data handling and sort of sharing of products goes? Okay,
so when we say the word sensitive data, we have to be, I think there's various levels of what's sensitive data, right? So if it's truly sensitive data, don't use Tableau, okay? Just don't. I mean, but let's say it's data that you just don't want to have. When you publish to Tableau Public, it's searchable. People can search for general things. So let's say I make a map on just trees, and someone searched for the word trees. I'll show up in that long list in their gallery. But you can, if you go into one of the options, you can hide that, and you can turn it off. So now your work is still published on Tableau. But it's not findable or searchable traditionally. Now, the URL is still there. If you give the URL to somebody, even though you've turned it off, the searching of it, they can still get to it. So what we do is we turn it off there. I told you there's an HTML embed. We take that HTML embed because we only want to show up in one location for people to search for it. And so let's say I go back to my community. They have their community website. They put that HTML embed there, and it's only there. So not everybody in the world is finding it. The people that are interested in that community are seeing it on that page. And we have a project right now that we're just starting off over the next 2 months. We'll be working on to build that same thing for that.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Well, if we have no further questions, then I'd like to give a big thanks again to Christopher, Kazuma, and Nick. And that wraps up this session. Please go enjoy your morning tea.
Thank you.